24HR 00798, A, B, C, and D. These are Huron Township versus Helen Therian. May I have your appearances, please?
Caitlin Foley Carter, I'm with Huron Township, Your Honor.
Good morning, Your Honor. Max Manoogian appearing on behalf of Helen Therian. I am standing in for the attorney of record, Kirsten Iverson, with the respondent's consent.
Where's Ms. Therian?
Your Honor, I was just asked by Ms. Iverson to stand in and ask for an
I'm sorry,
adjournment on
sir.
this matter.
No. I can't hear you when you turned your head. Where's your client?
Your Honor, I was just asked by Ms. Iverson to stand in. I can, if the court wishes her to be here, I could try to get a hold of Ms. Iverson and get her here.
No, the case is scheduled for a formal hearing right now. And that's why I'm asking you where the client is, but you're standing in for Ms. Iverson. I understand that, but where's the client?
Your Honor, I'm sorry. I did not know that it was set for a formal hearing. I don't know where the client is.
So you're standing in for Ms. Iverson to what end then? If you're not aware of the client being here or what the case is scheduled for?
To request an adjournment, Your Honor.
Any objection, Ms. Foley Carter?
No, Your Honor, I hope that this will resolve prior to the next formal hearing date, so I have no objection.
Thank you. Mr. Manoogian, this courtroom rotates off of the Huron docket right now, so we're adjourning this case over to April the 25th at 11:30 a.m. back on Zoom, but the time will be contingent upon Ms. Foley Carter finishing her docket in the courtroom number 3. Is there anything else, Ms. Foley Carter?
Nothing, Your Honor, thank you. I did notify the officer that he does not need to appear.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Manoogian?
No, Your Honor. Thank you so much.
Have a good day, sir. Thank you.
April 25th at 11:30, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Hi, do you need to speak with the prosecutor?
We spoke
Okay,
uh,
sir. Are
a
you
few
ready
days
for the?
ago. I mean, if
Oh,
she's here, if she wants to touch base prior to the hearing, I'd be open to that.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Caitlin, I put defense counsel in your meeting room.
Okay, thank you. I talked to
Yeah.
him last week and I don't think the matter will be resolved, but I'll
Oh.
check with him.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Sir, good morning. What is your name, please? Are you all set for the
Yeah.
judge? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mary Ann.
Yep.
These are 2-3 HR 11944, A, B, C, D, and E. These are Huron Township versus AJ Trucking. May I have your appearances, please?
Caitlin Foley Carter, I'm with Huron Township, Your Honor.
You're muted. Mr. Azakar? You're muted.
Oh, apologies about that. May I please this honorable court? Good early afternoon, Your Honor. Annie Alzakir appearing on behalf of defendant.
Thank you. Today is the day and time scheduled for the formal hearing in these matters. How are we proceeding?
Your Honor, we're proceeding with the formal hearing.
Where's your client, Mr. Azakar?
He's in the Zoom, Your Honor.
The driver, not the, is the driver an owner of the company
No, he's just a
or
driver.
an officer of the company?
Pardon me?
I said, is the driver, who I see is the only person here, is he the owner or an officer of the company?
So he's the driver, which is to whom the citations were issued.
I understand that, but I asked you a different question. Is he just a driver or does he have some other interest in the company?
He's just a driver.
Thank you. Ms. Foley Carter, are you ready to proceed?
We are, Your Honor.
Any opening statement, ma'am?
We waive.
Any opening statement, Mr. Azakir?
We waive.
Thank you. Your first witness, Ms. Foley Carter.
We'll call the officer, Your Honor.
Sir, would you state your first and last name for the record and then spell them both?
Ross, Ross. Last name is Haydenak, Hadyniak.
Raise your right hand for me, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. You may put your hand down. Ms. Foley Carter, proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, I'm going to have you state your name again for the record.
Ross Haydenak,
And how are you employed?
through Huron Township Police Department.
And how long have you been employed with the township?
Close to 3 years.
And what are your general duties as a police officer?
I am a police officer for the Township of Huron. I am assigned to the traffic unit.
And were you on duty on November 20th of last year at approximately 3:44 in the afternoon?
I was.
At about that time, where were you?
I was in the turnaround on 275, just north of Will Carlton Road.
And is that in Huron Township?
It is.
Were you in a fully marked police vehicle?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have the occasion to stop a truck and trailer as indicated on the citation?
I did.
When did you first see the truck?
The truck was operating southbound at highway speeds prior to the ramp on 275 approaching Will Carlton.
And where did you stop the truck?
The truck was stopped on Will Carlton, approximately a half a mile from 275 west.
And about how far apart is that between when you saw the truck and when you stopped the truck?
I would say close to 2 miles, a mile and a half, 2 miles.
And what first drew your attention to the truck and trailer?
The truck was traveling southbound with his tarp back, which would indicate that he had some type of a load to keep it secure. The movement of the truck with its weight on with the trailer bouncing and the bulge in the tires. And then I observed that his lift axle was in the air.
And why specifically did you stop them?
Due to the fact that his lift being in the air, he could have been in violation of overweight citation.
And did the driver ever lower the axle?
The only time the driver lowered the axle is when I activated my emergency lights and sirens. As I was stopping the vehicle, I did see the axle go down to the ground.
And that was about half a mile away from the turn you testified?
Correct.
And roughly 2 miles to a mile and a half from the time that you initially saw the truck.
Correct.
Was it reasonable for the driver to keep the lift axles up that long?
No.
Why not?
Within reason, the lift axle is to be maintained down unless they are negotiating the turn. I would argue that before the turn and after the turn, the driver had sufficient time to lower the axle.
And did you speak to the driver about the lift axle?
I did.
What, if anything, did they say?
I honestly can't recall the conversation then. I just know obviously what I saw that day.
Certainly. Did you weigh the truck?
I did.
And what scale was used?
The scales were used from our motor carrier unit. He did just supply the scales. There were 2 times that the truck was weighed. Once at
Your audio just...
we tried to weigh the truck at the dump right there at the end of Will Carlton. However, the driver was unable to do so. So I packed the scales up and I escorted the driver to the rest area at 94 and Belleville to the cutouts.
And are the scales calibrated by the state?
They are.
And did you accurately record the weight on the citation?
I did.
And was the weight of some axles over what is permitted per axle?
Axle 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7 were overweight.
And did you have an opportunity to complete a general inspection of the truck and trailer?
I did.
And did you find any defects?
There were violations for a rear ID light, a passenger side marker light, reflective tape on the back of the trailer, and the license plate was obscured by dirt and mud.
And are those equipment violations pursuant to the Motor Carrier Safety Act?
They are.
And that has been adopted by Huron Township ordinance, correct?
Correct.
As a result of the, did you check through lien to verify that you said the plate was obstructed. In what way was it obstructed?
The trailer plate was covered in mud and dirt.
And were you able to discern what the registration and or plate said?
I was not.
It was not visible because of the dirt?
Correct.
And as a result, did you issue a citation?
I did.
And what was the citation for?
The citation was for overweight initially, and then there were 3 equipment violations, and then the registration violation for the plate.
I have no other questions.
Thank you. Your witness, sir.
Judge, if I may, just briefly on cross-examination.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Officer, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
Good. Just a few quick questions. You testified that you were positioned on I-275
Yes,
on
sir.
the time that the tickets were issued, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And your testimony was that you were positioned just north of Will Carlton Road. Would that be correct? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Approximately, to the extent that you can recall, how far is just north of Will Carlton Road is in miles, if you could?
The emergency turnaround from that position to the stop sign at Will Carlton is in between 3/4 of a mile and 8/10 of a mile.
Okay. And the exit, the Will Carlton Road exit, is that something you would deem in your experience to be a turn?
I would classify it as a curve.
Okay. And just to confirm, so you were positioned 3/4 of a mile north of Will Carlton, correct?
Correct.
You testified that it was in your belief that the driver had sufficient time to lower the axle.
Correct.
Is that correct?
As I stated, the vehicle was observed with the axle up even after the turn at Will Carlton. In my belief, the driver would have had ample time to drop the axle.
Okay. And what do you base that belief on?
Experience on the trucks, how those axles are performed, as well as the time it takes for that vehicle to get up to speed and that axle to drop.
Did you have any personal knowledge on that specific tractor trailer combination?
Yes, 7-axle truck and trailer combinations are very common in our township. We have also trained on them in the training courses as far as the configuration goes, the training that is offered by MSP.
And as far as the scale is concerned, you testified that it was calibrated by the state. Would that be
Yes.
correct?
Yes, they are required to be every 2 years. We do ours every year.
Okay. So when was the last time that specific scale that was used on the stop was calibrated?
Those scales would have been calibrated at the beginning of 2023, I would believe. I am not in charge of when those scales go. I just do know that they are done yearly.
Okay. The Huron Township Police Department, the state, or any other organization required to be certified in the usage of those scales, the specific scale that was used on the date in question?
Yes.
Do you possess that certification?
The certifications are on file at the police department.
So do you possess that certification?
I do not carry copies with those with me, no.
So were you certified in the usage of that scale?
Yes.
When were you certified?
You do, as long as you are a certified officer in the state of Michigan, there is no actual certification. You can enforce CMV law as long as you are a certified police officer.
So there is no requirement that you possess additional certification for the uses of that scale?
There is training that can be taken. I have done all of those training courses, but there is not an actual certification to use the scales.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Foley Carter?
None, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Officer, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your next witness, Ms. Foley Carter.
We rest.
Thank you. Mr. Azakir, any witnesses, sir?
Yes, Your Honor, the driver, Kendall James.
Thank you. Sir, would you state your first and last name and spell them both for the record, please?
Kendall James, KENDALLJAMES.
Mr. James, raise your right hand for me, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You may put your hand down. Your witness, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. James, if you could again, please state your first and last name for the record.
Kendall James,
And Mr. James, how are you employed?
I'm a truck driver for AJ's Trucking.
And how long have you been a semi-tractor trailer driver, truck driver?
In total, since 2009, but for the last 3 years, I've been with AJ Trucking.
Specifically on the data question, what were you hauling?
We were hauling dirt.
Okay. And where were you hauling dirt from?
From the construction site. We were excavating on 275, just right at 94. So we were, from that intersection, we were pulling dirt and taking it to Will Carlton.
And was that road or load rather repetitive?
Yes.
Okay. And how long had you been on that specific load?
That Pacific load, from the maybe 15 minutes from the time it took me just to maneuver to southbound 275 and start down to Will Carlton. So maybe 15 minutes. The normal time it would take to do that turnaround is maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes.
And approximately during that day, how many prior times did you navigate that stretch of road to load and drop off your load?
Oh, I want to say, but at that point, maybe 7 times that day. Yes, I would say 6 to 7 times.
And when you were pulled over, what load was that on that spectrum?
That was actually my last load of the day. So we were finishing up for the day. So yeah, that would have been 6 or 7.
And let me shift your attention to the tractor trailer you were driving on the data question. Do you recall the make and model of the tractor trailer?
I know it's a Peterbilt. I'm not real sure of the model, but it's an older Peterbilt, like a 2000 early 2000 model Peterbilt. I'm not sure of the model.
And what about the trailer?
No, I'm not sure of the make and model of the trailer.
Is the trailer equipped with lift axles?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with how lift axles work?
Generally, yes.
Okay. And how long had you been driving or utilizing that specific trailer?
I was that specific trailer. That was my second season with that trailer.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that you were quite familiar with that trailer?
Yes.
Quite familiar with the nuances the trailer presented?
Right. Correct.
Okay. So on the data question, if you could just take me through, I guess, your procedure when getting on the road after you're loaded. What's the first thing you do?
First thing after I'm loaded, the first thing I do is as we were pulling away from the machine, I would make sure I can tarp the load, and then I would let the tarp back and navigate my way off the construction site to where we can turn around and get access the highway. Once I access the highway, as soon as I got a straightaway, the lift axle goes down. As I'm approaching any ramp, the lift axle comes up. Especially if I have to make a turn or if it curves or anything into that nature. But at Will Carlton, there's a right turn I have to make, so the lift axle is coming up.
And why does to your knowledge, why does generally a lift axle have to be disengaged when approaching a turn or a curve in the road?
It can cause you to overturn.
And generally, is that overturning or a jackknife event? Is that an event dangerous to yourself as a driver?
Yes.
And based on your training and understanding of the roads and operation of a commercial motor vehicle, could that also present a hazard to others on the road? Yes. Okay. So as you, I guess, approached, or rather got on 275, it is your testimony that your lift axles were engaged. Would that be correct?
Yes.
And on every single occasion that you, on that specific date in question, when you accessed that specific stretch of I-275 that allowed you to engage your lift axles, you engage your lift axles. That would be correct?
Yes.
Okay. And specifically, at what point did you feel it necessary to disengage the lift axles on that day in question?
As I was approaching the Will Carlton exit.
And if you could, I know it's been a while, but just recount the distance from the actual exit wherein you actually lifted the lift axles, or began the process rather of lifting the lift axles.
I would say about maybe a quarter mile before the exit, I hit the button to lift that axle. With that particular truck, I had to do it a little sooner because it's an older model, so it takes a little longer to go up and down than what you would normally expect. So maybe about a quarter mile.
Okay. And then at a certain point, I guess you noticed the police officer behind you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What point was that?
Actually, as I was on Will Carlton when I completed the turn, and I noticed him in the mirror, in my rearview mirror, with his lights on behind me.
Had you already navigated the turn?
Yes.
Okay. Is that why you then dropped your lift axles?
Yeah, once I completed the turn, I put the axle down.
Obviously, because it was safe to do so, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any conversations with the police officer?
Yeah.
Did you at all express to him that your rig, your tractor trailer combination was equipped with lift axles?
I didn't express that to him, that the trailer was equipped with a lift axle, no.
Did you express to the police officer that the lift axles, specifically where you noticed the police officer and the stop was being initiated, were disengaged to help you negotiate a curve in the road?
Can you repeat that?
Did you at all express to the police officer that specifically when you first noticed the stop being initiated, your lift axles were disengaged to help you negotiate a turn in the road?
We didn't discuss that, no.
Okay. Is it your understanding that at the time that you lifted the lift axles on the road, specifically at that time, I strike that, it was a poor question. Based on your understanding and training on that tractor trailer combination, is it your understanding that you had to lift the axles about a quarter mile or so prior to the exit in order to have them fully disengage?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I had to decline a call that was just interrupted you as you were speaking.
I'll ask it again.
I'm on my cell phone, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So based on your training and understanding of the specific tractor trailer combination, would it be fair to say that specifically at approximately a quarter mile prior to the Will Carlton exit, you thought it was the approximate time to lift the lift axles in order to allow you sufficient time to negotiate the turn?
Correct.
Okay. I have no further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Foley Carter.
Just a couple real quick, Your Honor. Mr. James, you testified that you've been driving that rig for 2 seasons now?
Yes. Well, now will be the 3rd season.
Okay. And that you're so familiar with it that it takes a little longer for those axles to engage and disengage?
Yes.
And you testified that the truck and trailer were Peterbilt. Was that what you stated?
Yeah, but actually I'm wrong. It's actually a Kenworth, actually.
Correct. That's what I have on the ticket. All right, that's the only question I had.
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else, sir?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. James.
Thank you.
Any other witnesses, Mr. Azakir?
we rest.
Thank you. Ms. Foley Carter.
Certainly, Your Honor. Your Honor, the statute states that drivers may lift their axle to negotiate a turn. The officer testified that he first saw the truck and trailer roughly 3/4 or 8/10 of a mile from the Will Carlton exit, which is a turn, wherein the lift axles were raised at that time. The officer testified that the driver did not release the axles until he was stopped roughly half a mile from that turn. So for the 1.5 to 2 miles that the officer observed this truck, those lift axles were raised. It certainly wasn't necessary to raise those that far in advance or far after the negotiating the turn. I certainly don't dispute that lift axles need to be raised in order to negotiate a turn, but it wasn't required when he was traveling on I-275 far in advance of that turn and on Will Carlton far after that turn. Again, in addition to the overweight, the 3 equipment violations were pursuant to the Motor Carrier Safety Act, which is adopted by Huron Township ordinance, ordinance, correct. And the officer did testify that the plate was obstructed by mud and was unreadable. As such, we ask that you find the respondent responsible of the cited offenses.
Thank you. Sir.
Judge, yes, real briefly, I guess the event that matters here, Judge, is not anything preceding the police officers first noticing the tractor trailer approximately 1/4 mile or so prior to the exit. That is the event in question. Specifically, when that police officer noticed my client's tractor trailer, it was in the process or had otherwise disengaged its lift axles in an attempt to negotiate the Will Carlton Road exit. That exit is a curve, and pursuant to statute, my client was allowed to lift the lift axles in order to negotiate that turn. Obviously, Your Honor, there are major safety concerns with not having the lift axles disengaged when a tractor trailer negotiates a turn of any sort. And so the testimony is clear, Your Honor. My client had his lift axles fully engaged at all times relevant on I-275. However, as he approached the Will Carlton Road exit, he disengaged the lift axles. I also want to note, Judge, that pursuant to People v. Busha, there's also a subjective component that is, the determination of when or when not to lift the axles is not so rigid. In that specific case, the driver lifted the axles a bit earlier than anticipated, and the record reflected that that was because it took too long for the air compressor to pump air into the system that supported the axles and the brakes. And so there is no testimony here, Judge, that the prosecutor presented to contradict our assertion that it was necessary to raise the axles a bit sooner than usual to allow Mr. James to negotiate that turn. And so pursuant to MCL 257724, A1 and 2, Mr. James operated lawfully in lifting his axles, and this specific violation should be dismissed.
Ms. Foley Carter.
Yes, Your Honor. Counsel cited People v. Busha. Unfortunately, it is inapplicable here. I don't have the case in front of me, but I'm familiar enough to know that the case is about a truck and trailer that had to negotiate multiple curves, one after the other, and it wouldn't make sense for them to disengage those axles in order to just raise them again. Here, it's I-275. There are no curves of that extent. The officer testified that he saw him again between 3/4 and 8/10 of a mile away from that turn at Will Carlton. And council then wants us to ignore the fact that those axles weren't disengaged until another half mile after the turn was negotiated, once the driver was finally pulled over. I do think that this is very clearly, it was very clearly weighed correctly with the axle raised, as he wasn't supposed to have it raised prior or after negotiating that turn.
If I may, Judge, just briefly.
Sir.
I do have the case of People v. Boucher in front of me, Judge. I have read it, and I can tell you that the case is not significantly different. The prosecutor is right in that it involved a series of turns. However, there was significant distances between those turns. And the general norm was that commercial motor vehicle tractor-trailer combinations equipped with lift axles were required to drop their axles after negotiating a single turn because of the significant distance. And so this is the same argument that's being made here, that the Court of Appeals overruled. There are additional components that obviously are taken into consideration, such as the specific nature of the tractor trailer. These components were taken into consideration by the Court of Appeals, Judge. The testimony was that it was an older tractor trailer combination. It took a little bit longer to fully disengage the lift axle. The driver was very familiar with the tractor trailer combination. He had driven specifically on that stretch of road many times over the past 2 years. On that specific date in question, he drove on that stretch of road 7 times prior. And it was his testimony that on every single occasion, the lift axles were engaged at the same location and disengaged at the same location. And specifically, as far as why they were disengaged at that specific location, it is because that is where the driver believed it was necessary to disengage them to allow them to be fully disengaged in order for them to navigate the turn or the curve. And for a police officer or a prosecutor who is not familiar with the tractor-trailer combination to argue otherwise, arbitrarily without any evidence, is honestly uncalled for. There is no evidence here to rebut that, and this ticket, especially as it pertains to the overweight violation, was issued erroneously, Judge, and must be dismissed.
Ms. Foley Carter.
Well, briefly, there was testimony that the officer has extensive training in truck and trailers. I would just like to note that. He was also the officer testified that the driver was traveling at highway speed and that axle should be used for braking prior in addition to lifting. So I don't believe that axle should have been lifted at the time that it was. It was unnecessary.
Thank you.
If I may, Judge, real brief. Ms. Foley's not a commercial motor vehicle operator. She's not an operator specifically as it pertains to this specific tractor trailer combination. So for her to blatantly state, arbitrarily state she doesn't believe it was necessary is baseless. It's not found for in the evidence that was presented before this court. What was presented before this court was a testimony of the driver that had extensive experience on that specific rig, Your Honor, and he believed it necessary, based on the circumstances presented, to lift the axles approximately a quarter mile prior to the Royal Carlton Road exit, which is exactly what he did. And had he not done that, Judge, I know the statute was based on the overwhelming concern for road conditions. Well, the argument here, the practical argument would be, hey, drivers, if we were to adopt the prosecutor's theory of the case, it would be, hey, drivers, let's overlook the safety of yourself and the safety of others in favor for the conditions of the road. The theory would have drivers essentially attempt to lift their axles at the very last moment, irrespective of their subjective issues with the respective tractor trailer combinations, regardless of what happens. And that is just not practical, Judge. That's not the ethos of the statute. That's exactly why 257.724 was enacted, Judge, to prevent such circumstances. And there's case law specific on this issue. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Foley Carter.
Using counsel's own words, if there were issues with the respective truck and trailer, it should have been taken out of service then. I have no other, Your Honor.
This court, having heard the testimony of both the officer present on the scene and the driver of the vehicle, the court will find the defendant, AJ Trucking Services, responsible for all of the counts that appear on the citation that was issued on November 20th, 2023. There's the overweight with a fine of $2,102. There is the equipment violation for the defective or missing rear ID light, $200. The C, missing passenger side, missing or defective passenger side amber marking light, D, missing or defective rear reflective tape on the trailer, $200. And the registration or plate violation for the plate on the vehicle being obscured, that's $150. Sir, does your client need more than 5 days to pay these amounts?
Yes, Your Honor.
How long, sir? I'm sorry,
2 weeks.
14 days to pay. Anything else? Sir,
Nothing further.
thank you. You're free to go, Mr. James. You have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
What, last case on the docket is 24HR019298. This is Huron Township versus Olivia Williams. This case was scheduled for a formal hearing at 11:30. Ms. Foley Carter, the court received a notice this morning that Ms. Williams paid the citation. I'll send the matter back downstairs. Mary Ann, that being the last case for us for the week, we stand adjourned. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.